This article discusses the history of the region of Syria since antiquity. For the history of the modern state, see Modern History of Syria. History of Syria covers the developments in the region of Syria and modern Syrian Arab Republic. Syria most likely derives from the name of the Neo-Assyrian Empire established in the 10th century BC. Modern Syria became independent in 1946 following a period of American occupation and mandate. In 1958, the Republic of Syria became briefly part of the United Arab Republic, but in 1961 withdrew from the federation. From 1963, the Syrian Arab Republic has been ruled by the Baath with the Assad family exclusively from 1970. Currently, Syria is fractured between rival forces on the course of the Syrian civil war. The history of the region may be divided into periods as follows: Prehistory of the Levant, Ancient Near East, c. Ebla, Mitanni, Neo-Assyrian Empire, Syro-Hittite states, Classical Antiquity, Neo-Babylonian Empire, Achaemenid Syria, Hellenistic Syria, Roman Syria, Parthian Empire, Sasanian Empire, Middle Ages, Muslim conquest of Syria, Umayyad Caliphate, Seljuk Empire, County of Edessa, Principality of Antioch, Mongol invasions of Syria, Ilkhanate, Mamluk Sultanate, Early Modern Period, see Ottoman Syria, Modern History of Syria, see French Mandate of Syria, Syrian Republic, 1963 Syrian coup d'état, Baath Party, Syrian Civil War, Prehistory. The oldest remains found in Syria date from the Paleolithic era. On 23 August 1993, a joint Japan-Syria excavation team discovered fossilized Paleolithic human remains at the Dedaria Cave some 400 kilometers north of Damascus. The bones found in this massive cave were those of a Neanderthal child, estimated to have been about 2 years old, who lived in the Middle Paleolithic era. Although many Neanderthal bones had been discovered already, this was practically the first time that an almost complete child's skeleton had been found in its original burial state. Archaeologists have demonstrated that civilization in Syria was one of the most ancient on Earth. Syria is part of the Fertile Crescent, and since approximately 10,000 BC it was one of the centers of Neolithic culture where agriculture and cattle breeding appeared for the first time in the world. The Neolithic period is represented by rectangular houses of the Murabet culture. In the early Neolithic period, people used vessels made of stone, gyps and burnt lime. Finds of obsidian tools from Anatolia are evidence of early trade relations. The cities of Hamoukar and Dma flourished during the late Neolithic and Bronze Age. Ancient Near East. The ruins of Ebla, near Idlib in northern Syria, were discovered and excavated in 1975. Ebla appears to have been an East Semitic-speaking city-state founded around 3000 BC. At its zenith, from about 2500 to 2400 BC, it may have controlled an empire reaching north to Anatolia, east to Mesopotamia and south to Damascus. Ebla traded with the Mesopotamian states of Sumer Akkad, Syria, as well as with peoples to the northwest. Gifts from pharaohs, found during excavations, confirm Ebla's contact with Egypt. Scholars believe the language of Ebla was closely related to the fellow East Semitic Akkadian language of Mesopotamia and to be among the oldest known written languages. Ebla was probably conquered by Sargon of Akkad around 2330 BC. The city re-emerged as the part of the nation of the Northwest Semitic-speaking Amorites a few centuries later, and flourished through the early 2nd millennium BC until conquered by the Indo-European Hittites. From the 3rd millennium BC, Syria was occupied successively by Sumerians, Egyptians, Hittites, Assyrians and Babylonians. The region was fought over by the rival empires of the Hittites, Egyptians, Assyrians and Mitanni between the 15th and 13th centuries BC, with the Middle Assyrian Empire eventually left controlling Syria. When the Middle Assyrian Empire began to deteriorate in the late 11th century BC, Canaanites and Phoenicians came to the fore and occupied the coast, and Aramaeans supplanted the Amorites in the interior. As part of the general disruptions and exchanges associated with the Bronze Age collapse and the Sea Peoples, from the 10th century BC the Neo-Assyrian Empire arose, and Syria was ruled by Assyria for the next 3 centuries, until the late 7th century BC. After this empire finally collapsed, Mesopotamian dominance continued for a time with the short-lived Neo-Babylonian Empire, which ruled the region for 70 or so years. Classical Antiquity. Eventually, in 539 BC, the Persians took Syria as part of their empire. This dominion ended with the conquest of the Macedonian Greek king, Alexander the Great in 333–332 BC. Syria was then incorporated into the Seleucid Empire. The capital of this empire was situated at Antioch, then a part of historical Syria, but just inside the Turkish border today. The Roman general Pompey the Great captured Antioch in 64 BC, turning Syria into a Roman province. The city of Antioch was the third largest city in the Roman Empire, after Roman Alexandria. With an estimated population of 500,000 at its peak, Antioch was one of the major centers of trade and industry in the ancient world. The largely Aramaic-speaking population of Syria during the heyday of the empire was probably not exceeded again until the 19th century. Syria's large and prosperous population made it one of the most important Roman provinces, particularly during the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE. Syria is significant in the history of Christianity. Paul the Apostle was converted on the road to Damascus and emerged as a significant figure in the Christian church at Antioch, from where he set off on many of his missionary journeys. The Roman Emperor Elagabalus was half Aramaean, and his family held hereditary rights to the high priesthood of the sun god Elagabalus at Emesa, in Syria. He was succeeded by his cousin Alexander Severus, who was also from Syria. Another Roman emperor who was Syrian was Philip the Arab, emperor from 244 to 249. Palmyra, a wealthy and powerful indigenous Aramaean state, arose in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, and for a short time it was the center of the Palmyrene Empire, which briefly rivaled Rome. With the decline of the empire in the west, Syria became part of the East Roman, or Byzantine, Empire in 395. Medieval era. In 634 to 640, Syria was conquered by the Muslim Arabs in the form of the Rashidun army led by Khalid ibn al-Walid, resulting in the region becoming part of the Islamic Empire. In the mid-7th century, the Umayyad dynasty, then rulers of the empire, placed the capital of the empire in Damascus. Syria was divided into 4 districts: Damascus, Homs, Palestine and Jordan. The Islamic Empire expanded rapidly and at its height stretched from Spain to India and parts of Central Asia. Thus Syria prospered economically, being the center of the empire. Early Umayyad rulers such as Abd al-Malik and al-Walid I constructed several splendid palaces and mosques throughout Syria, particularly in Damascus, Aleppo and Homs. There was complete toleration of Christians in this era and several held governmental posts. In the mid-8th century, the caliphate collapsed amid dynastic struggles, regional revolts and religious disputes. The Umayyad dynasty was overthrown by the Abbasid dynasty in 750, who moved the capital of empire to Baghdad. Arabic, made official under Umayyad rule, became the dominant language, replacing Greek and Aramaic in the Abbasid era. For periods, Syria was ruled from Egypt, under the Tulunids, and then, after a period of anarchy, the Ikhshidids. Northern Syria came under the Hamdanids of Aleppo. The court of Ali Saif al-Dawla, sword of the state, was a center of culture, thanks to its nurturing of Arabic literature. He resisted Byzantine efforts to reconquer Syria by skillful defensive tactics and counter-raids into Anatolia. After his death, the Byzantines captured Antioch and Aleppo. Syria was then in turmoil as a battleground between the Hamdanids, Byzantines and Damascus-based Fatimids. The Byzantines had conquered all of Syria by 996, but the chaos continued for much of the 11th century as the Byzantines, Fatimids and Buyids of Baghdad engaged in a struggle for supremacy. Syria was then conquered by the Seljuk Turks. After a century of Seljuk rule, Syria was conquered by Saladin, founder of the Ayyubid dynasty of Egypt. During the 12th–13th centuries, parts of Syria were held by Crusader states. The county of Edessa, the Principality of Antioch and county of Tripoli. The area was also threatened by Shia extremists known as Assassins, and in 1260 the Mongols briefly swept through Syria. The withdrawal of the main Mongol army prompted the Mamluks of Egypt to invade and conquer Syria. In addition to the Sultanate's capital in Cairo, the Mamluk leader, Baybars, made Damascus a provincial capital, with the cities linked by a mail service that traveled by both horses and carrier pigeons. The Mamluks eliminated the last of the Crusader footholds in Syria and repulsed several Mongol invasions. In 1400, Timur-Lenk, or Tamerlane, invaded Syria, defeated the Mamluk army at Aleppo and captured Damascus. Many of the city's inhabitants were massacred, except for the artisans, who were deported to Samarkand. At this time the Christian population of Syria suffered persecution. By the end of the 15th century, the discovery of a sea route from Europe to the Far East ended the need for an overland trade route through Syria. In 1516, the Ottoman Empire conquered Syria. Ottoman era. Ottoman Sultan Selim I conquered most of Syria in 1516 after defeating the Mamluks at the Battle of Majdabak near Aleppo. Syria was part of the Ottoman Empire from 1516 to 1918, although with two brief captures by the Iranian Safavids, notably under Shah Ismail I and Shah Abbas. Ottoman rule was not burdensome to the Syrians because the Turks, as Muslims, respected Arabic as the language of the Quran, and accepted the mantle of defenders of the faith. Damascus became the major entrepot for Mecca, and as such it acquired a holy character to Muslims. Because of the barakah of the countless pilgrims who passed through on the Hadj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, the Ottoman Turks reorganized Syria into one large province or eyalet. The eyalet was subdivided into several districts or sanjaks. In 1549, Syria was reorganized into two eyalets, the eyalet of Damascus and the new eyalet of Aleppo. In 1579, the eyalet of Tripoli, which included Latakia, Hama and Homs, was established. In 1586, the eyalet of Raqqa was established in eastern Syria. Each religious minority, Shia Muslim, Greek Orthodox, Maronite, Armenian, and Jewish, constituted a millet. The religious heads of each community administered all personal status law and performed certain civil functions as well. As part of the Tanzimat reforms, an Ottoman law passed in 1864 provided for a standard provincial administration throughout the empire, with the eyalets becoming smaller vilayets, governed by a wali, or governor, still appointed by the sultan, but with new provincial assemblies participating in administration. The territory of Greater Syria in the final period of Ottoman rule included modern Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, Palestinian Authority, Gaza Strip and parts of Turkey and Iraq. During World War I, French diplomat François-Georges Picot and British diplomat Mark Sykes secretly agreed on the post-war division of the Ottoman Empire into respective zones of influence in the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916. In October 1918, Arab and British troops advanced into Syria and captured Damascus and Aleppo. In line with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, Syria became a League of Nations mandate under French control in 1920.